freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, Cheryl Todd here from GunFreedomRadio, and I am excited to have as my guest once again my good friend Chuck Holton. Chuck Holton is the host of the Hot Zone podcast, and he's the author of a whole bunch of books. The newest one is what we're going to be diving into today. It is called, shamelessly hold it up, this is Bulletproof, one of his previous ones, and Prowess.
It's called Prowess.
Prowess, the man you were meant to be. Welcome to the show, Chuck.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very excited about this book. Mostly because I'm excited because I'm done with it. It's been a lot of work. You know, I don't really like writing. I like having written.
Yes.
I like to see my books up on the shelf, but writing it's a lot like work. And this book's taken me a couple of years. It was a couple of different projects that ended up sort of blending together. And I'm excited to have it done. I'm already starting to get some feedback on it, and that's the fun part. So I'm pretty pumped.
Well, for good reason. I have not gotten mine in the mail yet, but I did go to Amazon.com, hint, hint to everyone out there who's thinking of gift ideas. We've got the holidays coming up, all kinds of holidays coming up. And once you hear more about what this book is about and why Chuck wrote it, I think you're going to need several copies on your gift list for the people in your life, the men in your life, and even yourself. I want to read it for myself. I didn't even raise a boy child. Our daughter is a girl, but she married someone's boy child. Right. So that's always important to know. So just kind of take us to, you said it was a couple of projects that melded together. Mm-hmm. But your books come from a place of there's a need out there, like Bulletproof that I have here. It's the making of an invincible mind. So there's a time and a place for each book to come into the world. And right now, becoming the man you were meant to be, why is that needed right now?
You know, I've always been kind of surprised. I write about manhood. I write about men. I go to talk to a lot of men's groups and church groups and schools and things like that around the country. And I've always kind of been struck when I go to talk to young men, so youth groups and things like that. I'm just not very impressed with young men these days. You take your average high school senior male, and you try to talk to them about important things. What really fires you up? What is it that gets you going and gets you out of bed in the morning? And I get, and they can't go 30 seconds without looking at their phone or grabbing their crotch. They can't look you in the eye when they talk to you. They can't hardly form complete sentences sometimes. And I'm kind of appalled. And I think back to my grandfather's generation. When a boy was 8 years old, he was out in the fields with the men. He was throwing hay and cutting firewood and doing the things that men do. And he was learning from the men. He was there absorbing it from the men because he was working alongside them. Well, how often does that happen today? That's kind of the realization that I came to, is that young men really don't have mentors today because most of their teachers are women. I mean, not that you can't be mentored by a woman, of course, but they don't have the male influence in their life to show them what it means to be a man. Yes. And so they're kind of treated like toy poodles, stay on the couch, look pretty, don't do anything dangerous, and be comfortable, be safe, right? Mm-hmm. And they're not allowed to be violent in any way, shape, or form. There's absolutely no physical contact at school and things like that. I mean, shoot, when I was in school, there were fist fights at recess every day. And we came out okay, more or less, right? So, I mean, it's changed so much with the zero tolerance policies and, you know, all that kind of thing that we have really, it's almost like we've worked very hard to neuter men before they even become men, to just neuter our boys. And so what I get when I go and speak on the topic of manhood is I get young men lining up and coming up to me and saying, nobody's ever talked to me about what it means to be a man. And I'm confused because see, I was just at College of the Ozarks not long ago speaking at their convocation. And afterwards I had like 20 guys lined up that wanted to talk to me. And they're telling me I'm 21 years old. I've never had a girlfriend because I don't have any idea how to do that. I mean, think about it. They interact with devices so much that they've not learned that very complex and subtle art of wooing a female. And so I watch them when they get around girls, and it's kind of at turns horrifying and just plain awkward, just hilarious, you know. Even my own sons, you know, I watch them and just like, oh gosh, son, oh wait, stop, just wait, stop. You know, and I realize as they come and talk to me, they will tell me, I don't have any idea how to get a girlfriend. And if I do get one, how do I find the right one? And if I have one that's sort of interested in me, how do I know if she's the right one or not? How do I know if she's the one for me? And so I've got that question so many times over and over and over again that I realized it's time to write a book about this. And what I've done with Prowess is I've just taken the sum of a lot of the correspondence that I've had back and forth with young men, and I've rewritten it into a book, and even included some of it just in its raw form. So it's answering those questions. It's the young lions who are, you know, skewering themselves on their own mistakes, getting finally to hear from some old lions. And so as I was doing this, I realized, you know, the military has a process for helping the young guys get to where they need to be, become the men they need to be. And it's called a creed. Every unit in the US military has a creed that they make you memorize when you get there. I memorized the Ranger Creed, you know, and we recited it every day before PT. Recognizing that I volunteered as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession, I will always endeavor to uphold the prestige, honor, and high esprit de corps of my Ranger regiment, and on and on and on. That creed embodies the values of the unit, and it's a great way to pass those values along to the younger generation. Well, our young guys don't have a creed today. And so I went around, and one thing I've noticed is that when I meet a guy who is really mature, effective, powerful man, in almost every case, he has a personal creed that he's come up with for his life. And so I went around and collected some of those military creeds and collected some of those personal creeds and wrote a whole section of the book about making your own creed, coming up with the creed that works for you. So the book is not about making every man a warrior, because not every man's called to be a warrior. So we can all learn from the warrior. And Prowess is about becoming the best version of the man that you were created to be. Not being the man that your parents want you to be, not being the man that society wants you to be, being the man that you were created to be, and wielding your manly power well in a way that makes the world around you a better place.
That's awesome and amazing. And I'm so happy that there is your voice and your experience out there to talk to the next generation, because that's who we're going to hand the keys off to, right? To this world at some point.
That's right.
And if we have not well equipped them, that's going to be on us. And so then our children's children are going to look back at our generation and go, where were you? What were you doing? Why weren't you teaching?
Yeah, it's not even that we didn't teach them to be men, it's that we didn't allow them to be men. Boys will go out and will seek out that knowledge on their own. I mean, boys desperately desire to become men. They want to identify as men. But we've stripped them of the things that taught them how to do that. the ability to go out and get in a fist fight with your friends, and then make up and be better friends because of it. The ability to go out on your own without having somebody hovering over you all the time and get hurt.
Yes.
Go jump your bike off a ramp someplace and break a bone or two. I mean, those are the kinds of things that we're just taken for granted by guys my age.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were talking about it the other day. I wonder if we're not the last generation that will ever be allowed to go just play on their own and learn those hard life lessons by doing, rather than just not learn them at all.
Gosh, that's so true. And I did fail to mention when we were introducing you that you did serve as an Army Ranger for, gosh, a long time. How many years were you in?
4 years as a Ranger, and then I flew helicopters for 4 years after that.
Very good. And so, I mean, that everything that we experience in life adds to the fabric of our lives and who we are. And so when you are going and you're speaking to younger people, are you talking to younger military guys, and are you experiencing them as any different than just say the average high school class?
Yes, they certainly are different. I mean, the military I think are made up of the best of us, if you ask me. But that said, the military has changed a tremendous amount since I was in. And even in the military today, there's so much institutional timidity. That is the full bird colonel that's looking for that next promotion. And if anybody gets hurt or if anything bad happens, he's afraid he's going to lose his promotion. That the guys in the military are not being allowed to take risks like they used to. They're not being allowed to I just came back from Afghanistan in August, and I was appalled at the fact that the vast majority of U.S. troops that are serving in Afghanistan right now never leave the base. They literally never leave the base.
Oh my God.
And they're in a, quote, advise and assist role, which means the Afghan troops are going out and doing things, and the U.S. guys are like watching from behind the fence going, okay, and you can literally get a ticket for walking to the chow hall without your road guard belt on in Afghanistan. Okay. I mean, so that tells me we must have won the war by now. I mean, if they got, officers out there handing out tickets to people for not,
pretty low priority stuff is
right. And it's just, there's a tremendous sense of, that they're so risk averse. And I was just kind of appalled at it. And it's not that the troops want to be that way. I had one guy tell me, I feel like a meat eater that's been fed a steady diet of cabbage for 10 months. They resent the fact that they're being, held back and not being allowed to go out and really take risks like they were in 2004, 2005. Yeah. And many of them, they don't even know because they weren't there in 2004, 2005. But I was, and I can tell you it's changed a lot. The bottom line is, our whole culture, our whole society is getting so risk averse and so wrapped up. I'm so motivated by comfort, fear, and pride that the men especially are becoming very ineffective. And that is something to be concerned about. And so Prowess is my way of addressing that and trying to get some of that manly knowledge into the hands of these young men who are motivated to learn it.
Absolutely. Well, when I was reading over the synopsis at Amazon.com, when I was
makingmenbook.com.
Yes, when I was ordering that, just the synopsis is, I mean, it's worth a pause to stop and look at. It starts with men are in trouble. So we've talked a little bit about, well, what do you mean by that? One of the things you've written there is that women now are 20% more likely than men to seek out a college education. And so what does that mean 10, 20, 30 years down the line for the prospects of men to, be maybe the breadwinner in a household? Now, is that the end all be all of manliness to be the breadwinner? No, not necessarily. Right. But we also don't want to lose that part
You don't want
of,
to be another child in the house either. I mean,
yes.
look, I think women are far stronger than men in many ways. And God gave them that strength because he knew that from time to time men would abdicate their role as the provider, protector, and affection giver in their house.
Mhm.
And so he made women strong enough to be able to handle that. But that's not ideal. That's not the ideal, way it's supposed to be. The
Mhm.
way it's supposed to be is that men and women are supposed to complement each other, work together. The man is supposed to create an environment upon to give his wife a canvas upon which to paint the beautiful story of her life.
Mm,
That's his job.
mm,
And so that means providing a safe environment at home that's
mhm.
free from rancor and hatred and jealousy and anger. That means the man picks up the heaviest load and puts it down first and puts it down last, that he does the hard things and shields his family from those things. And he functions as the gatekeeper for his
Mm,
family. And
mm,
he is in charge of what comes through those gates, whether it's your television or your front door,
mhm,
and is going to affect his family either positively or negatively.
mhm.
But when that man's gone, then the woman's got to step up and accept that role. And I've had so many women that look, more women read my books about manhood than men do. And that's an indictment on men, because men just don't read very much anymore. But
Mm,
women read 80% of all the books that are written, that are purchased.
mm,
And I get so much feedback from women saying, I have got to get my daughter to read this book about manhood so that she won't make the terrible mistakes that I made in choosing
mm,
a passive, weak, self-absorbed man.
mm.
And it's so sad. I mean, I've had women come up to me at speaking engagements in tears, so they can't even speak, and just hand me a note that says, please pray for me. I'm married to a passive man.
Mm,
Passivity is a toxin that infects marriages around our country, and it creates resentment and fear in the people that we're supposed to be leading as
mm.
men. We're supposed to
Wow.
be shepherding. So it is an epidemic, and it's something that the good news is, what I tell my boys is, if you're an engaged man, you will be so much more powerful than the weak, passive men all around you, that you will never want for a job. You'll never want for a way to put food on the table, because an employer will beat a path to your door if
Yes.
you're an engaged, powerful man. And
Yeah.
that's what prowess is all about. It's about how to do that.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to say, from the female perspective, the stronger my spouse is, Danny, you've met Danny,
Mhm.
the stronger he is, the stronger it challenges me to be.
Right.
And then I really come, full force to who God created me to be.
Right.
So it's like you said, it's a compliment.
Well, that's called leadership. That's the technical term.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And it is so important.
Right.
I mean, there are times in our marriage when maybe I am more busy than he is, or he, vice versa. It's not about busy. It's
No.
not about that.
No.
And when he is his best self, then I am my best self. Our
Right.
daughter can be her best self. Our son-in-law sees that as an example. Our grandchildren will see that. It's
And so many of the principles in this book really apply to men and women, but I'm speaking primarily to men. But
Sure.
I mean, I even have a lot of women that come to me and they say, how do I find the right one? I've been looking for that right man for so long. And I just say, you're going about it all wrong. That you don't find the right one, you become the right one. And when you focus on being the right one, when you're the right man that God created you to be, then theoretically you could choose just about any woman who's not made physically ill by the sight of you, and you could make her your wife, and you could make her happy for all of her days, because you would be meeting those hardwired needs that she has.
Yeah.
That's what men were created to do. So you just get busy being the man you were created to be, and the right one will appear. So I think it's just a difference in mindset. And at least from the men that I've been corresponding with, I'm hoping that this book will encourage more young men to contact me, email me. If you don't have anybody to talk to, if you need a mentor, just email me, and I do my best to get back to everybody who sends me a message and try to help, because that content may end up being the next book that can help even more people.
Absolutely. And just right now is a good time to say what that email might be.
My email is just chuck.holton@gmail.com.
Could not be any more simple than that. chuck.holton@gmail.com. The next two things I wanted to touch on the synopsis of the book, I think maybe go hand in hand. One is that you cite that men are 3 times more likely than women to commit suicide. So there are a lot of factors that come into play with suicide, but there's, the core of it is there's a hopelessness that you don't see a pathway to tomorrow, maybe the next hour of your life. You don't see a pathway there. You're not being fulfilled, or you would have that pathway.
Right.
And then something that it seems the FBI has actually identified as a group of male people in our world that they consider possibly terrorist threats, called involuntary celibates.
Yeah.
So that's a fairly new term. I've been hearing it maybe the last year or so. But before that, it was never on my radar, and my degrees are in psychology. It's something that we would have studied when I was in school. So talk to us a little bit about what the heck is that?
Well, involuntarily celibate pretty much describes about 99% of the guys I went to high school with, I mean, right?
Well, that's true. When did they become
just the fact of being involuntarily celibate does not necessarily make you a terrorist. But here's the difference. I've been talking about this a lot lately. It's really fascinating me. Human beings were meant for physical touch. Yeah. And from the day we're born, we are being touched. We're being held. We're being somebody's arm around us. We're getting hugged by our family. We're getting kissed by our spouse. We're wrestling with our brothers. We're, fighting with our brothers and stuff. And even that is again, it's a kind of physical touch that, hey, I'm here, right? And so by being here, I matter. Today's young men, by and large, do not get touched. And they've done studies on babies in Romania in orphanages that don't get held at all. They just get left in a crib, and they get a bottle stuck in their mouth, and they get their diaper changed once a day, and that's it. Yeah. And they literally fail to thrive because a human being needs physical touch. But if you think about young men today, they go to school. Nobody's allowed to touch them at school. You'll get put in jail if you touch a kid at school, whether it's patting them on the back or getting in a fist fight at recess. Either way, you're in trouble. So kids are not getting touched at school. And then they come home and they go down in the basement and they get online and they play video games. So they're not getting touched. And then they're consuming so much porn. I interviewed a couple of youth ministers for this book, Prowess. And one of the things they told me is one guy said, I have not counseled a single young man. These are Christian young men from the church. I have not counseled a single one in the last 5 years that was not addicted to pornography. He said, I'm to the point now where I just believe that there are those who are addicted to it and there are those who lie about it. And that's the only 2 types of young men that there are out there today.
Wow.
So they're getting a ringside seat to the most intimate of human activity.
Right.
And yet nobody's doing that for them.
Right.
And they're not there. And so I liken it to eating salted peanuts to quench your thirst. And they just get more and more and more thirsty. Well, then they start to find each other in these chat rooms online, in Reddit and 4chan and 8chan and whatever. And they start to stew in their own juices, and they've formed like a subculture and they call themselves involuntary celibates. And they start to resent the world around them and say, those shallow women who the only men they're interested in are men who are rich and good looking and powerful and have a job. And that's just wrong. Somehow that's morally repugnant to them, that a woman would want a man who has a job and is wealthy and looks good, and so they start to think that the world deserves to be punished because it's not giving me what I need. And so they have actually identified, the FBI has identified at least 4 mass shootings in the last couple of years that have been perpetrated by guys who specifically called themselves incels. and some other attacks as well. But over 40 people that have been murdered by people in those attacks. And then if you start to widen the net a little bit and look at guys who didn't specifically identify themselves as such, but who definitely qualify. I mean, there's a reason why the shooter in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida, there's a reason why that shooting happened on Valentine's Day, because he was upset about girls, couldn't get a girlfriend. And so if we start to look at this, it's a real national epidemic at this point. And so the pornography is definitely an issue that's got to be tackled. The meaninglessness of all that passive activity. The average young man spends more than 4 hours a day engaged in completely passive activity, whether that's social media, video games, watching porn, whatever. 4 hours a day. You start to add that up. That's over 3 months a year of their waking lives that they're spending in absolutely worthless activity and possibly harmful, right? And so that is a serious problem. But like I always tell my boys, the good news here is that if you're one of the young men who doesn't do that, who eschews passive activity, you will stick your head up above the rest so far that you will get noticed, you will get the job, you will get the girl, and you will have a wonderful life. And that's really what it's all about. We want to promote the maximum of human flourishing. And the maximum human flourishing for our young men is not treating them like poodles and leave it, just be on the couch, don't do anything dangerous. Here's a screen to look at since you're 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
The maximum that we can help our sons flourish is in helping them to embrace hardship, do hard things, go out and find a mountain to climb, find a challenge to embrace. And out of that, you become stronger. And you will be the man you were created to be, and you will be a man of prowess.
I love it. That's so true. It really does. Everything does come down to personal responsibility.
Sure.
And if we are not instilling that value into the next generation, apparently they're not just stumbling on it on their own. So we do need to find our ways to engage. If we don't have children, then maybe our nieces and nephews, or maybe, if we are part of a volunteer organization or something like that, where we can help people understand that there's so much power in personal responsibility, because then the only place to look if you're unhappy is in the mirror. Oh, well, what have you done to change your circumstances?
That's right.
I can't say the number of times in my life where that's where it's led me, right back to that mirror. And it's like, darn it, but actually,
that guy I shave, that's
yeah, but actually that's amazing, because then I can do something about it. I'm not a victim.
By taking responsibility for the challenges in my life, it gives me power over them.
Yes.
The thing about this incel ideology, I've been attacked online by several of them since the book came out, saying, how dare you, talk about us like that? It's all your fault. It's all your fault. And I just tell them, guys, if it is my fault, then you have no way of changing it. You have no control over your life. That's a pretty sorry place to be. But if you will accept responsibility for where you are, even if it's not your fault, you gain power over that problem, and you can help fix it.
Absolutely. I love it. So before we move on off the topic of the book, there's this new phrase that I'm starting to hear, and I'm wondering what you think about it, because if we're trying to impact the next generation, the millennials or the Z's or whatever these new generation names are, if they don't respect what we have to offer them, then I'm not sure what inroads we're going to have. And this new phrase has come up. It's called "Okay, Boomer," and
as a way of just blowing off the advice of the older generation.
Yeah, like just very sarcastically, very derisive. Like whatever. I don't have to listen to anything you say. And I'm not a boomer. I missed it by a year.
Me either.
But I'm sure they would look at me and say the same thing, because I'm a mom, I'm a grandma.
Well, there's there's a Bible verse, a Bible story about that. King David's son Absalom, when he took power, David had given him power, and then all of his old wise advisors were still there to give advice to King Absalom. But Absalom chose to disregard the advice of the older guys and take advice from the guys his age, and make things harder on the slaves and make it harder on the people, raise taxes, make it worse. And he ended up losing his kingdom because of it. That's what led to the split. And so, this is a problem as old as time. If young people want to disregard the wisdom of their elders, they will be the worse for it. They will suffer for it. And we can't control what the society at large necessarily does, but what we can do is try to reach them one at a time. And I just have faith that there are enough young men out there who want to learn from other people's mistakes rather than having to make their own mistakes. I mean, look, it is you cannot call yourself smart if you insist on making all your own mistakes. That's just stupid. If other people have made them, then you're an idiot if you got to go make the same mistake over again. I'm sorry. That's the way it is. So I have faith that there are enough young men out there who look at that and say, yeah, I want to learn from, I don't want to go through all that pain and hardship myself. I want to learn from the lions. And when they do, what they're going to find is that they will far outpace, they'll far outcompete their peers who are, back there someplace in their mom's basement watching video games.
Very, very good. All right. Well, you are a man of many talents. You wear many hats. As I said, you've got your Hot Zone podcast. You write these amazing books. You're a godly man. You're a husband. You're a father of several. You're not a grandpa yet, but you're
not yet. Oh man, it's killing me. My oldest daughter got married a year and a half ago, and I'm like, come on,
I
want grandkids.
Getting the watch.
Gotta
Come
show
on
people
now, let's
pictures
go.
of my pet monkeys. Because I don't have any grandkids to show off. It's really kind of pitiful.
But you're a father-in-law. You impact a lot of people in your sphere of influence. And you don't just sit on your laurels and say, well, I've got all these kids and all this great life, this amazing wife. You actually put yourself out in these, speaking of the hot zone, the name of your podcast, you go into these hot zones, these danger zones with other men, maybe women, I'm not sure, with a group called the
there's women there too.
The Free Burma Rangers.
Right.
And a friend of mine, mutual friend of ours, Miles Vining, he originally was talking to me about this group and the wonderful work that they do. And he talked about it like it was just, everybody should know. And because everybody doesn't know, I agree with him. So let's let more people know. What the heck is a Free Burma Ranger?
So there's a guy that I served in the Rangers with a long time ago, who his name's Dave Eubank. And Dave is one of the most impressive human beings you will ever meet on planet Earth. And I don't say that lightly, but I really mean it. This guy is the epitome of selfless servant. He's really an amazing guy. So he became, after he got out of the Green Berets, he went from the Rangers to the Special Forces. And then when he got out of the military, he went to Thailand and formed a humanitarian aid organization called the Free Burma Rangers, Burma being Myanmar, right next to Thailand. Most people don't know that there's a long-standing, 70-year civil war going on in Burma between the Burmese military junta that controls the country and the Mountain Hill Tribe people, the Karen, the Karenni, the Shan, the Kachin. And there are more than 10,000 people being murdered there every year by the government. The government, it's the largest army in the world, I believe, belonging to a country that's not actually in conflict with anybody but themselves. And so they just massacre people on a regular basis over there. So Dave and his group, he started training local guys as medics, and they would go in and they would bring help and hope to these internally displaced people in Burma. And they would actually sometimes have to protect them from the Burmese army as they were being attacked. And so they started to train them in tactics, because one of the tenets of their group is that if the people can't run, then we won't run. And that just means, wow, you've got to, I mean, that's a commitment if you think about it. Like, if these people are all going to die, then we're going to die with them. And so he has since trained like 90 teams of medics and people over in Burma, and they go in and they help people all over that country. He's then moved on to Sudan and then Iraq during the fight against ISIS. And now he's been in Syria for a couple of years. And so whenever something really flares up in Syria, he takes a group over there. It's all volunteer group. And this time we had 12 guys. I just came back from a couple of weeks over there. We had 12 guys there when I was there. And they just take armored ambulances and they kind of create a bridge. See, in every crisis around the world, there's a kind of humanitarian gap that exists between the front line where people are getting injured and the first care that they can receive, whether that's a refugee camp or a hospital or something. There's a gap there that people have to cross themselves normally. And many of them die along the way where there's just no care. In Syria, when I was there in February in the fight against ISIS, the humanitarian gap was 4 hours driving between the front line and the nearest refugee camp. Okay. And so most people would just have died out in the desert if they were escaping from ISIS. So what Dave and his group does is they go and they help those people bridge that gap and get to care. And they keep them alive long enough. They take medics in there, keep them alive long enough to be able to do that. But this is obviously very, very dangerous. The reason that the gap exists is because that area is too dangerous for most NGOs to venture into. And so he takes mostly military or former military guys and runs it like a military operation, and armored vehicles and everything like that. And they go in there and literally put their lives on the line day after day after day in order to save the lives of the people who are fleeing the violence. And it is one of the most incredible causes I've ever been a part of. Helped me realize that, if you're a young man and you really want to see some action, don't join the military, because the military will lock you up on the base. I was in Afghanistan in August. They weren't being allowed to do anything really, except for a very few select special ops guys. But the Free Burma Rangers, they go over there and they're going in without a net. They don't have air support and they don't have medevacs and they don't have all that stuff. They're just going in on their own. And the thing that sets them apart is that they pray before they do everything. I mean, they pray nonstop. We would pray before we got in the vehicle. We'd pray while we were driving. We'd pray when we got there. We'd pray when we were deciding what to do next. We'd pray when we got back. We'd pray. I mean, just pray. And I fully believe, I mean, you'd have to be there to really see what I'm talking about. But I fully believe that the only reason Dave Eubanks is alive today and his family is because of how much he prays. And people see that. He's in a Muslim country. We were trying to rescue some wounded people out of a hospital in Serikania that was surrounded by the Free Syrian Army. And we got permission from the Turks and the Free Syrian Army to come in and get the wounded people out of the hospital and take them out. We got in there and the Free Syrian Army was in control of the hospital. So these are former ISIS fighters who escaped the fall of Raqqa and joined the Free Syrian Army. They're as brutal as ISIS ever was, because they are ISIS.
Right.
And Dave walks into the hospital and he's surrounded by ISIS guys. And he called on the radio and said, "Pray for me. I'm about to hug an ISIS guy." He just picked the biggest, ugliest looking guy and went, "Hey," went over and gave him a big hug and then put his hands on his shoulders and prayed for him right there. Just bowed his head and prayed. And this guy was so bewildered at what was going on that he, okay, and he kind of hugged him back a little bit and just disarmed the whole situation.
Wow.
Anyway, so it's a fascinating organization. They do really great work, and they are saving lives in places where lots of lives need to be saved, without a doubt.
Absolutely. And I think we can all, those of us that are prayer warriors, the praying kind, that I think we can definitely spend a few prayers for the people doing that incredible work. That
one of the members of the team was killed about a week after I left. Um, so just the 2nd of November, he was killed by an airstrike, Turkish drone attack, on a marked ambulance, by the way, war crime. They bombed one of their ambulances and wounded 2, killed 1, and Dave somehow made it out unscathed. But so they do need your prayers, without a doubt.
Absolutely. They and you, because you're one of them.
I am very proud to number myself among men like that. I mean, I was telling Dave when I was there, I said, I didn't come here to die. I don't want to die while I'm here. I got a picture of my wife on my phone here that I look at every day just to remind me of why I want to go back. But you know what? If you had to die, this would be a pretty good group of guys to die with. I would feel pretty good about that. It'd be an honor to die with men like that.
And doing that work. I think I agree with you. But yeah, you caused me to pause a moment when you said armored ambulances. I was like, the ambulances are armored. That tells you that they're not afraid. The other side is not afraid to commit those war crimes and fire upon these life-saving vessels.
We were fired upon almost daily while I was there.
Crazy.
Almost every day. And I mean, it's really amazing that more of us weren't injured. And there were some cases where, in one case, we were ambushed by about a dozen guys with crew-served machine guns from 200 meters, and none of us got hit. It was a miracle.
So this is a great place to kind of, come full circle and start to wrap up a little bit. But, your book, Prowess, being the man you were meant to be, you've written that because there are people out there that are just a little shiftless, maybe a lot shiftless, just not quite finding their purpose in life. And what greater purpose can any of us have other than to live in service of our fellow man and woman?
Well, yeah. And this is my message to young men. It's like, I just came back from Syria, where people are literally dying every day. They're starving to death. They don't have enough water. They don't have enough medicine. Where were you? You were playing video games.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You've made yourself useless.
Yeah.
You were not created for that kind of a meaningless life. There is so much need around the world. That's what I do for a living. I go and report on this need. And I've seen it from Venezuela to Baghdad and everywhere else this year. There's so much need. There's so much that you could be doing to help your fellow man. And you leveled up on Call of Duty? What? So that's what the book is about. It's a call to action for young men.
Yeah. And the people that are so desperate to try to find life and to hold on to their one and only life. And then there are men here that are basically throwing theirs away.
Right.
And there's definitely messages there for.
I really think, Cheryl, that one of the reasons why our troops suffer so much when they get back to the United States does not have to do with the trauma that they're being exposed to in the war zone. It has to do with the anger that they feel when they get home. They've just been over there in the war. They've seen firsthand how precious and costly our liberty is.
Yes.
And then they come home and they see how clueless most Americans are, that they take this precious gift that their friends were just recently dying to secure for us, and they sit on it and play with it Facebook, or they sit on it and play video games. And it makes them angry. And I think that's part of the issues that our troops are going to have to deal with. Absolutely.
I agree with that. And so when you are over in these hot zones, you do often take footage and talk to us via your podcast called The Hot Zone. Talk to us just briefly about what that is, how folks can tune in, and because I have learned so much from your podcast, because you're not the media. There's no like slant, like, well, you have to present it in either a conservative voice or a liberal narrative that you have to fulfill. You're just saying, look, this is me. I'm Chuck Holton. I'm standing here. I'm talking with this other human being, and here is our experience.
Here's what's happening. I think that most Americans are getting very, very tired of the clown show that is the U.S. mainstream media these days. I mean, I am so fed up with hearing about bickering between the partisan different sides. I'm so fed up with hearing about, you know, celebrity gossip and, oh, you know, Britney went out without her panties again, or, you know, whatever. I'm so fed up with that. That's not news.
No.
In the meantime, like I say, there are people suffering all around the world. And one of the frustrating things is that if you ever do hear any of that important news that breaks through, that there's, you know, people dying in Syria or Venezuela or whatever, there's nothing you can do about it. You feel helpless to do anything about it. So it's kind of depressing because, you know, there's all this mayhem happening and you're just powerless. You just have to sit there and watch. Well, the Hot Zone was created to take advantage of the technology that we have at our disposal today with new media and enable people to literally reach through the news, through me, and impact the lives of the people that are in those situations. So I'll give you a great example. I met a bunch of several single young ladies that had been sleeping on the street in Colombia after they escaped from Venezuela. And things were so bad that it would be better to just go somewhere you didn't know anybody and sleep on the street, because at least you could get something to eat. And there's nothing to eat in Venezuela.
Right.
And so as I did a whole series for my podcast where we took them to a big box grocery store, and they walked in and I just recorded their reactions, just going like, they didn't even know there was so much food in the world. I mean, they were just blown away that there's 17 kinds of shampoo. That we live in a socialist country. You get one shampoo. That's it. I mean, there's no, holy cow. And they were just blown away by that.
Wow.
And they all had, so what we did is we said, what would it take to get you to the next level, the next place you need to go to improve your life, and the next step for you? And for some girls, it was $40. For some girls, it was $180 for a bus ticket to get to the other side of Colombia where they had some family that could take care of them or whatever. And they didn't have the money. Well, Hot Zone podcast listeners donated the money to help those girls. And so then we made another podcast about it where I went and said, okay, George, here's your $180. We're buying the train ticket, or the bus ticket, I mean, and giving it to this girl now. And by the way, then I helped him connect with them on Facebook so that he could those people still keep up with those girls today.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's really a cool way to not only learn about the important things that are happening in our world, but actually be able to have an impact. I think, you know, people get fed up with trying to give to these mammoth aid organizations and you don't know what's happening to your money. And then it turns out that the CEO is making $17 million a year or something, right?
Right.
And in this way, you see and that we're very small. We're very small. We can't help a lot of people. If you want to help a lot of people, we're not the place to do that. But if you want to know exactly who your money is helping, that's where I come in. And I meet somebody and I tell you their story on the podcast. And then the next day, I've already received some donations through PayPal or whatever. And we get that money out, we take it directly to them, and we help them directly. And that way people know that they're making a difference.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
Something else that, you know, here at this holiday time when people, you know, maybe they don't have a lot of family, but they have that thing inside that they want to help, they want to give. I think that is a beautiful vehicle to help people connect with other real live human beings that need the help.
Exactly.
It's amazing. Well, just as we wrap up, Chuck, I want to appreciate you so much, or tell you I appreciate you so much for all that you do and all the example that you set. And tell folks again how they can buy all of your amazing books, including Bulletproof and what's this one? A More Elite Soldier. I don't have that one. I better get that one.
Yeah. So the best, I mean, if you want a signed copy as a gift or something like that, they make great stocking stuffers. You can just go to makingmenbook.com and that'll take you to the store. There's a sale on right now, kind of a launch sale where you buy the physical book and you can get the audio book for free. So we're selling a lot of those. I already sold out of my first printing of these things, and we're getting some more in here in the next week or two. So that's the best way to do it, but you can also find it at Amazon or wherever books are sold.
That's fantastic. So audio, did you do the audio
Yep,
for the book?
I narrated it, right.
That is one of my bucket list things, is I want to narrate a book, and probably need to just sit down and do that work you were talking about and write one.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a lot of work.
Yes. Yes, sir. I can appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you again so much for all you do. Happy holidays to you and your family. Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year, all those wonderful
too.
things. And we will
Well, I
talk.
hope to see you this year. I don't know if I'll make SHOT Show or not, but if I can make it, I'll definitely be looking for you.
Absolutely. You know, there's a place at the dinner table for you. So
All
we
right.
always go to dinner while we're there. So let me know for sure. All right. Thank you so much, Chuck Holton. You too. All right. Stick around. There's always lots more coming up on Gun Freedom Radio.